welcome to Check It Out, Comrade, an indie game podcast where every 2 weeks we bring you 2 indie games and tell you what we like about them. I'm Nick Glauber.
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this week we're doing Axiom Verge and Yearwalk. Gary, let's jump right into Axiom Verge. It's a like Metroidvania game that came out March 31st, 2015. It's on PS4 and all your PC stuff, and apparently it's coming out on Vita soon. And tell me what you like about it, Gary.
Yeah. So it's very Metroid and not very like Vania. And it's very the interesting thing is when we say it's very Metroid 1.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got like it's not like it's as inscrutable or anything as Metroid 1, but it takes more influence from the first game than Super Metroid, which is the one that most people are more familiar with, and most game devs actually will kind of check in their design.
Yeah.
So that's something we haven't really seen before, which is neat. And it's good. Like it is good. It's gonna be weird. This is a weird 2 games that like I have mixed feelings about for no good reason. Like really high quality games that like I can't put my finger on them not grabbing me.
This one more so than the other one, but yeah, like this is really weird that it's not grabbing. I get everything about it. I understand why it's good, and I can't continue to play it.
Yeah, it's weird. Every time I pick it up, I'd rather be doing something else. And like I was trying to figure out what it was, other than just like it could just be real life stuff. Right. Just me being bored or down or busy or anything. And I think what it is that like even though like the individual thing, like the weapon variety is really cool and the story seems intriguing and the actual like things you run into, like the bosses and set piece moments are really cool and creepy. The areas all look so samey to me. And the areas that you can explore, like, we just did Super Metroid for Watch Out for Fireballs, and like that is way more linear and short than I remember it being. Yeah. It just gives the illusion of being really open.
This is sprawling.
This is way too open. Yeah. Like at any given time, you can just explore. Like you have to keep in your mind like 3 or 4 or 5 different side paths you don't take.
Yeah, and backtracking is a chore from hell.
Yeah, it's really not very fun. Like it doesn't like you move really slowly. Your sprite is very small in comparison to the screen, so you have a lot of ground to cover when you do it. And there's not like this kind of like it almost feels like it would benefit from like a shortcut system, which like Super Metroid only kind of had. Like there were weird little connections you wouldn't think so, but you also that was just smaller. Like you would go and you would explore one area and it'd be like, okay, this is Meridia. It has this color palette and this gimmick, and I'm exploring Meridia. And this I never got to that feeling like where I'm like, okay, I'm at an area, let's explore it.
Yeah, so there's definite like palette changes and stuff, but they seem arbitrary. There's no like this is a like placed set piece. It is just like, well, now the color's different.
And there are some like set piece things. Like there are a couple like specifically very early on, this isn't really a spoiler, but like you run into some piles of corpses that are really evocative and creepy and like pretty cool. And I was like, why are there all these corpses here? Right. These corpse piles keep getting bigger. Like I'm actually kind of intrigued by the story, which is something that, I'm on the record of saying like Metroid games are worse with more story. Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily true of this. For me, like, it just wasn't very fun to explore. Yeah. Which is what I like to do in these games. And it's like, I don't think it's bad. Like, I think it's probably a good game, and I'm not saying I'll never return to it. But every time I picked it up, to play it for the show, like, I got 4 bosses in, like 4.5 bosses in. Mm-hmm. And every time I picked it up to play for the show, I was like, I'd just rather be doing something else. Like, it's just hard for me. And they give you a map function to, like, you can write little notes. Yeah. Of, like, I need to come back here. And coming back is always a Metroid thing. Like you always have to do that. It's not like areas I can't go back to because they're blocked, or I have to go back to because they're blocked off. They're not blocked off. It's just so many tributaries. So I have that constant feeling of like needing to keep something in the back of my mind while I explore an area.
Yeah. The other thing I think it kind of falls short on in that aspect is there's no marker for when you're on the right path versus when you're on a side path. Yeah. Like the side paths, if they're I've very rarely in this game ever went down a route and hit like a definite blocker that I could tell I need, or that actually happened too often. But at the same time, like I would just go down a route and it would just keep going, and I'd be like, okay, so this must be the right one. But now I've gone so far that backtracking back to the last point that I remember there being a split off is going to take forever.
Yeah, and sometimes there's not stuff there. Like, and I know the tricks. Like, I mean, I assume there's not unless there's something I'm missing. So, like, I got to the, I'd take a very long path, get to a dead end, shoot all the walls, use my,
your drill
on all the walls, use the glitch thing, which is a really cool mechanic. Like, this really cool, weird meta thing that, like, you actually influence the game and it makes it look like you put in bad Game Genie codes.
It's awesome.
It's really cool. But just nothing would be there. And I was just like, well, that's a shitty feeling. Yeah. You don't put nothing at the end of a path. Like, you never do that. Like, that's why, JRPGs, like, their dungeons are almost uniformly been tedious because, like, they're just mazes and sometimes there's nothing at the end of a path. And that's why, like, a good game, will put something there, even if it's just a token, like a potion or something. Like, don't make me feel stupid for going to this dead end.
Right.
And this game just does that a little bit more than I wanted to.
Very, very recently in the point that I got to, I even like found a part that I either had to glitch or drill through like a wall and got through this area and like was able to drop down this very long vertical level, and then there was nothing at the bottom of it, and I like did everything on every wall and was like, okay, so why did I discover the secret that didn't reward me in any way?
And it's possible there's something you can do that you don't get later, but there's nothing to indicate it. So like in Super Metroid, they do the thing where like once you hit a block and if it can only be destroyed by a certain weapon, it has the little symbol of that weapon.
Yeah.
This game doesn't do that. So like that could happen in a Metroid game and you'd have a little symbol of a super bomb. And it's like, okay, if I get something that looks like that, I know I need to come back. Here, it just felt like, am I going to come back every time I get a new verb? And just, to this one place? Because there's nothing here that suggests something else I need to, like an advancement to my power set that I need to do to get through this.
Yeah, like when I first got the glitch gun, I was like, oh, I should probably backtrack to where like the big messy glitch piles were that damaged you at the beginning of the game. But I'm so far away from that, and I don't know if I'm gonna make all that way back there, have it do nothing, have discovered nothing along the way, and have to get all the way back to where I was. It's just not very good at communicating when you should backtrack, when you shouldn't, and when you've discovered something that requires you to have something from the future.
Yeah, and in a way that is, like, it makes me think that the person who made it, which is, like, one guy, which is really cool, but, like, one guy made it, and it's like he definitely has affection for the source material and understands 80% of what makes it good.
Yeah.
It's not like this guy is just totally misguided. Like, this is a good game. This is a game that, like, is probably, I'm intrigued by it, but the actual play was just frustrating. Like, what it made me think, and when I say it's just one guy, like, he's a game dev who worked on lots of, big studio stuff. This is his passion project. So it's still impressive, but it's not like some rando made this in his basement. Like, it's not Cave Story.
Right.
Which is a game that understands that part of Metroid, actually. Speaking of, like, what it made me think playing it was that, like, last year Shovel Knight came out, which is like maybe my favorite game that came out that year, or definitely one of them. And like, I like this idea of game developers as a whole admitting and understanding that like every one of those like kind of classic Nintendo games is a template for a genre. Like, DuckTales, like that's such a classic that like that is a genre. You can just kind of perfect that. Metroid is that way too. Like you can do that. It's just, we're still getting there.
Yeah, we haven't got it yet.
And eventually we're going to get like a Castlevania, like a perfect, like slow, stodgy. And we kind of did with like Volgar the Viking.
Yeah.
Like this indie game, like taking one of those old Nintendo games and kind of like adding modern touches and fixing it. That's very cool. Those are all like really important and, kind of foundational texts. So they should be like that. But this one doesn't quite do it for me. And it's weird too, because everybody was like, people were asking me, like, what do you think of Axiom Verge? Like, you like Super Metroid so much, you'll love this. And then I read reviews, and like reviewers that I trusted all like gave it really glowing scores and stuff. And I was very excited. I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Shovel Knight-esque experience, not in similarity, but like quality.
Right.
Like, I'm going to feel, like, I want to finish this and can't put it down. And all I want to do is put it down.
I agree. I felt exactly the same way, especially with how big it was being talked in on SA. I think specifically Captain Invictus made a really good post. That guy rules, by the way. If you guys aren't familiar with Captain Invictus, he does like Steam deals on SA and is fantastic. But he talked it up, and I was like, sweet, like I really want to play this. But I felt the same way for you. Like I see so much of this game I like, and just the regular portion, like the regular play of it, what I want from it based on all the tropes that it's like pulling from Metroid, it doesn't have 100%. Like you have it exactly right. Like he's got 80% of the understanding of what's good about the original Metroid and what's good about Super Metroid, and doesn't quite get all of them.
Yeah, and while doing some cool things that Metroid doesn't do.
Yeah,
like it has that speedrun mode, which is very cool. I love that idea.
Cyberpunky aspect that I'm in love with, but
yeah, like it does, and the it looks really good. I think the music is like, I wish the music was a little bit better, but like
it's not bad.
It's not bad. It's like fitting and stuff. Like it has things that it does really well, but at the same time, like it's missing something, and I don't exactly know what it is.
Yeah,
but didn't quite do it for me. But I can't not like recommend it. Like if it shows up in a bundle, like you should definitely try it. It's neat. It's worth trying.
Especially if you're itching for a Metro experience, but haven't very recently replayed any of the old ones. You're just like, man, I want something that, evokes that. Mm-hmm. This is probably going to fit your itch, and you should try it and see if it does. Because I'm sure, like, we know there's people who love this. I don't know why we don't.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. And again, like, I won't put it past like myself just being like, maybe I was unusually busy and in a weird mood. Like, I mean, we did do a skip week, like I had finals and shit.
Yeah.
So it is possible that influenced some of it, but also,
that's basically the same thing that happened to me with Divinity. Like, I know it's good. I'm 100% positive. I could not put the time into it. It could not hold me. It got you perfectly. It didn't get me. So,
yeah, and that's going to happen too, and it's like it's worth worth mentioning, and it's worth it's not a condemnation of the game. So
no.
It is just yeah. Anywho, let's talk about Year Walk.
Yeah, I think this.
Yeah, this is also something that like. So Year Walk, we'll start out like we normally do. Yeah. Tell me about Year Walk.
Let me give you the intro. So Year Walk was originally released in 2013 by Swedish mobile game developer Simogo for iOS, and has since been ported to Steam in 2014. And it is an adventure game, adventure puzzler. It's it kind of takes its own weird aspect, like weird visual style, and writey down puzzles, and that's it.
Yeah, it is. So it's like kind of similar to Axiom Verge. Like this is a game where I think it gets like 80% of it right, but it in my mind it just goes like from it passes as opposed like I liked playing it more.
Right.
Like it's like Myst. It reminds me, that was the thing the gameplay most reminded me of was like Myst, but with more like a more overt story and more agents in the world.
Yeah.
Like the plot of it, without spoiling it, because we will spoil the plot.
Yeah.
Is that it's based on this kind of Swedish folklore thing, with this thing called like Orsgon. That is this thing that you can do in Sweden, where it's this year walk you take that kind of helps you make decisions and helps you tell the future.
Yeah.
And there's a guy in it. You're the protagonist. He asks this girl to marry him, and there's this love triangle kind of thing. And she says she'll tell him in a year, and says, "Hey, don't do this year walk," but you do it, and then you run into all kinds of weird supernatural shit while you're doing it.
All sorts of Swedish folklore stuff.
So what can we talk about without talking about the story stuff? Like, one of the neat things about this is that it is meta, like very meta. There's
that's cool.
Thing called the Year Walk Companion that is essential for completing the game the correct way.
Yeah, on Steam, it's built into the game itself. It's a menu option up in the right corner. That's just like a little journal. Talks about the different folk tales that are being incorporated. Each has its own article and gives you kind of the actual folk story.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you read that at the start of the game, as you probably should, then you'll later run into those characters that are these mythical creatures.
Yeah, and it gives you this context. And like, what's interesting, because you played this on Steam.
Yeah.
I played it on my iPhone, and a lot of the interface stuff felt built for iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious as to how they did it.
If it felt fine.
Like, so specifically, and there's a part where you have to scroll off the screen to get a certain item. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Possibly. I thought it was, so yeah, I don't know exactly what we're talking about. Maybe we'll talk about it in the spoiler section.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think if you're referring to the same thing I am, it was in the menu item. So you go into one of the menus, it's turned bloody to notify you. And you click on that menu item, and then the object you're looking for will be in the article about that mythical story.
That's interesting, because that's different than how it works on the iPhone.
That is it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a totally different port. I guess a totally different experience.
So, so non-spoilery stuff. Mechanically, it's kind of weird. Like it's a like first-person view, but you can't move your camera. You can just move left and right, and then sometimes you get paths that let you go forward and backward.
So keep in mind, like, that's because it was, on an iPhone,
right?
Like, that's what it was originally built. So you'd be swiping left and right just to change your view.
Yeah. And in the Steam one, it's a continuous movement left and right as you hold, A and D. And there's a map to help you see where your connections are that you can go forward and backward on, and remember specific locations. And then essentially you're walking around this kind of snowy, backlands where there's a bunch of like signposts and weird stones and stuff that all have these kind of markings on them, these runes, and you are able to kind of put stuff together, find specific locations that eventually move the story along. So
yeah, that's interesting. Even just saying that, because there's no map. In the iOS version,
wow, yeah,
which I was going to complain about, because actually making your way around that snowy area that you spend a lot of your time in is a real chore.
Yeah, that would suck without a map.
Yeah, it's really like you get the little indications of where you can move, but like it's not very fun to move around. And like what's also interesting is you were playing it on Steam, so like you're sitting at a desk. On iOS, it's of the school of puzzles where like some of the puzzles are just, there's just a solution written down somewhere else in the world.
Yes.
And I don't like those very much. Like, why is that? Why is there a sign that has, like, yes, I see, like, you could, if you're feeling charitable, you could say, like, oh, I see a sign that has 3 dots. That has to be important. And then you go somewhere else where 3 dots can be important, and you use the 3 dots. But why are they written down on a sign, like, 100 feet away from that? Like, it's too non-diegetic. And also, I'm on a phone. Like, I don't want to be writing things down. Yeah. You can take screenshots on your iPhone, but then I have to like pause the program to go into my photos folder and dig through them. Like, it was kind of a pain in the dick.
That kind of is a shitty format for a post.
It made me think iPhone. It's so many things are based on it being an iPhone, and some of the interface stuff was very iPhone specific, but I don't think it benefits from being on a mobile thing, other than the fact that I think it's a good game and it deserved a lot of the accolades it got. Like, people were going flip the fuck out about this on iOS. Like, it won a lot of awards and everything. And it's because it was like a meaty puzzle experience and didn't feel like anything else on an iPhone. Yeah. Where the bar is lowered. Like, if this just came out in the Steam version, like, I think it would be very, very well received, but not hyperbolisely,
Yeah. And the writing thing, for one, I totally agree with you. Like, there's zero fucking consequence for that being the way the puzzlers work. Like, it is pretty lazy to put it bluntly. But yeah, like, as soon as I saw it, like, I went into this game pretty much blind, saw shit written on the walls with these weird runes and like symbols, and I'm like, I should write this all down.
It should be to note, like, I'm not against doing that in games. Like, I like your Myst and stuff. Like, I like
doing
those
that
games.
In an iPhone format is fucking dumb.
It was just, it was a pain in the dick to do it on the bus or like before I went to bed. I also will say that the game is spooky, and the subtle spooky stuff is good, and the jump scares are still jump scares.
Yeah, I think there's like one singular jump scare I can think of, and it's dumb. It doesn't do anything.
There's definitely 2. There's at least 2 that I ran into, and like, they're dumb. Yeah. So, jump scares are not my favorite thing in the world anyway. And like, I think that they work better in like a game that is like a normal environment, as opposed to something where like you're in this fantasy land where everything's off anyway. Mm-hmm. And like, if unpredictability of everything is kind of the norm, right? Something that's markedly unpredictable doesn't have anything to work off of.
Yeah, it didn't scare me, and I immediately was just like, oh, cool, a jump scare. Why did you put that in here, you jerks? It's
something
dumb.
popped out. Like, yeah, it's good job. All right. Yes, I'm scared of loud noises that happen suddenly. Like, great. Like, it's just like, it's always like somebody flinching something at your eye and then like making fun of you for blinking. Yeah. Like putting their fingers in your eye.
For flinching.
Exactly. Like, and of course I flinched. Like, you almost punched me. But like in like Resident Evil or something, I can handle a jump scare because like, hey, I'm exploring a mansion. Like I'm doing something normal. This is signaling something weird's happening. This game, like weird stuff's happening constantly.
Right. And you're in a game like Resident Evil where the point is like you're going to be on edge because at any point something could be attacking you, and that's the that's the emotive of the game. That's what it's trying to evoke. This isn't trying to evoke that. This is like, this place is kind of weird and you're doing weird stuff, and
it's going for a more complex feeling than just like terror or shock. Like it's not going for shock, it's going for dread.
Yeah.
And those are two very different flavors of fear, and like adding those jump scares kind of feels like a missed opportunity with those. And that said, like despite those things that were really annoying, like it's still a really good game.
It is a good game.
Yeah, I still really liked it.
A lot of the cool shit it does, we can't talk about without spoiling a bunch of stuff. So if you're never going to play this game, like it's pretty playable. You should probably try it. Know that you should write stuff down is all I'll say going into it. Write down everything you see. But if you're never going to play it, stick around. In a little bit, we will talk about it spoilery.
Yeah, and if you're not going to play it, why not watch PewDiePie play it on?
Oh God!
I mean, I don't do that, but it's funny because it is like horror themed. Like he got trapped into playing it.
It's what a garbage game for that format.
Yeah, it would be the worst. Like I'm just imagining his legion of like 13-year-old fans watching him play
and being bored to death.
and figuring out the the story of it. Getting the true ending, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. It's just like, sorry, 13-year-old YouTube fans.
Yeah, this isn't Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, go find a Minecraft, Let's Player to watch. Because, anywho,
let's do some admin stuff, and then we'll come back to
back and talk a little bit about Yearbach. What can people do to help out the show?
There's a lot of things. So they can come hang out with us on our social media. We have facebook.com/checkitoutcomrade and @comradepodcast on Twitter. And our homepage at duckfeed.tv/comrade. And we have a Patreon. The whole Duckfeed network has a Patreon. If you're able to pitch in a couple bucks, that's what helps keep us all this stuff running. Allows us to do cool things. Mm-hmm. And you can suggest some games via any of those avenues if you think we should check something out.
Yeah, agreed. And we're interested in having suggestions and stuff, because unlike the other shows on the network, like we don't plan this one very far in advance.
No,
at all.
We finished an episode and then we're like, oh shit, we should think of a couple other games to play for the next one.
Yeah. And it's also, so I will say one exception to that is our next episode. I think that we are going to finally talk about Project Eternity.
Yeah.
Even though I can't commit to having beat it by then.
Yeah, neither of us are going to have beat it, but I already, even not very far in, started a couple characters. I'm pretty fucking happy about it and want to talk about it. So.
I might beat it. Like I'm done with school now.
Nice.
So I have 2 weeks and I can put in some serious time into it. So, which is what I was kind of waiting for. Up to that point, I'm 12 hours in. I could talk about it now.
Yeah.
But like, I would rather get a little bit further into it. So
I'll have a couple weekends worth of time into it. So
yeah, and that will be an episode like our Wasteland episode or our Binding of Isaac episode, where it's just one game.
Yeah.
So like a mini watch out for Fireball. So look forward to that if you like that kind of thing. And so just a brief musical bump, and then we'll talk a little bit about Yearwalk and what the spoily things.
Yep.
So the interface thing is where you're finding the babies.
Yes.
And there's one in the iOS version. There's one that's to the left of the screen. Like the screen does the kind of thing where if you try to pull it and then let go, it bounces back.
Uh-huh.
And you have to kind of walk your fingers across it to pull it past the edge of the screen.
Weird.
And the baby's hiding there, and it's really cool.
Okay, yeah, the menu thing is really fucking cool because there's always icons up in the upper right of the Steam version, and that leads you to I assume the same stuff that's in the companion, like the login prompts that you don't get to the end of the game, which we'll talk about in a second. And then also the map, which you don't have, which is unfortunate, and the little journal entry thing or not the journal entry thing, but the little glossary thing that has all the stories in it. And when you're finding the babies, the glossary icon turns bloody, just like all the houses and stuff where the babies are. And if you click on it and scroll down, read through the whole thing, at the very bottom, there's one of the babies moving at the bottom, and you have to drag him out of there.
That's pretty cool. Like it sounds like an entirely different game.
Yeah.
There, because like there's a part where you in this one where there's blood dripping upwards from the ground, and you have to turn your phone upside down, and the baby falls from the new ceiling. So floor, yeah, like really very specific to iOS interface things that, like, when I was saying it wasn't built for iOS, like that stuff is great for it.
That stuff is awesome, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the map and the notes emphasis. But like, I'm just curious because it sounds like we probably had a real different set of puzzles for the most part.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, which is very cool. Like that's awesome, and that's the way you do an adaptation, you know?
Yeah, that makes me like it even better that they did 2 different versions of the same game that had wildly different ways of going about puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, I mean, story-wise, you find well, first of all, like one of the first things you find when you start your year walk is this box that's kind of like got a combination lock with with symbols on it, and that doesn't do anything until the very end of the game. So that whole time you're keeping in mind, like, where can I find these symbols that unlock this box, and you never find them.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing that we'll talk about in a bit. But otherwise, you find the gate to the church. If you read the story about your walk, you know the last step is to circle around a church a certain number of times.
Mm-hmm.
And so you find that the gate to the church is locked, and you need to find a key. You get visited by this woman creature called the Holdra. And you have to go chase her down to this tree and do some puzzles there. And the key gets transferred off, I don't remember how, to...
it melts when you first get it. It's like made of ice, and it melts. And then eventually you get it, and a crow takes it.
Well, first the horse guy, right? The horse
guy gets it, the horse-headed guy.
And that's when you have to find the milings, the babies, which the story about that's kind of cool.
Where it's like this guy that takes unbaptized babies or something like that.
It's like babies that were like born out of wedlock and stuff, and essentially like the mother will pay this person off to take the baby and purportedly like find it a nice home, do it all off the books, so that that stain is off her record of having a baby out of wedlock. But turns out most of those guys pretty much just killed the babies, and then they came back and haunted.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
Like it's like the Simpsons thing where, Homer's looking for a bathroom and he can't find it, and then later he's like, "Did you find the bathroom?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's just like that. Like, did you find my baby? Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll never know.
Yeah.
No.
And then once you get him all the babies, then he hands up the key, but then a raven takes it.
Yeah.
And you have to go chase down the raven. That one kind of that puzzle I think was not very well adapted. It's not really a puzzle, I guess. It probably made perfect sense to you on iOS, but on PC you went up to where the raven is, which is up the ladder in that dark room, right? And you have to like pull up on the raven to pull out the actual guy, the actual raven mythical creature guy.
Yeah, it's a tap thing.
Yeah. So
for this one.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It probably is a tap thing. Like you have to click on it a bunch of times, but that doesn't translate well to PC, because like I clicked on him once and he like opened his mouth, but it looked like he was just squawking at me. So I like went all around the map, then came back to him, and then I think the puzzle said like, or the hint system, which is this is the only time I used it, was like, you should find the raven and like touch him or something. And then so like I clicked on him a bunch of times finally and got his portion to come up.
I didn't find. I mean, it might have been there, and I didn't see it. I didn't find a hint system either.
Ah, yeah, that might have been the
which would have been useful. Well. I ended up having to resort to a walkthrough a couple times because it was, it's a pretty tough game. I think. Like these are some serious puzzles. Specifically a couple of those interface fuckery ones with the baby, and then there's when you end up in the bottom of the well, or not the well, like the little cave you go into, where it's dark.
Yeah.
And you have to bring the fire,
yeah. Just
like it's very easy to miss like one of those little symbols that you need, on your way out.
Right, right, yeah. So after you get the key from the raven, you can open the church. Then you have to go around the church specified number of times, which I don't remember where you find that out, but you find that out somewhere.
Yeah. That is it just tells you that. That's actually really frustrating too. Like you get this little movie. And it's just like, hey, hope you're paying attention. Write down this movie thing. And it shows you these woods and just shows you arrows like left.
Yeah, flashes arrows.
Right? Yeah. One of the cooler puzzles is that the musical one with the lady screaming, where it's like you're navigating this maze and you just have to make the choices when you're next to the woman when she's like in tune.
Yeah, when the pitch matches. Yeah. It's the same note.
Yeah, and it's really fun. Like you can listen to it, and some of them are subtle. Like there's like the one lady who's singing a note that's okay, but it's interspersed or mixed with another one where it is off key. Mm-hmm. So that puzzle's really cool.
Yeah, that one is nice.
But we should talk about the integration thing. So like after you beat it, you get to the end, you get in the church. You do this weird, like you're in a spacescape.
Yeah, the ending's weird. I think I'm not sure I really like it. The puzzles aren't really puzzles; they're just kind of like clicking on things in various ways until you finish it.
It feels a little shitty, but like you get this real bummer of an ending where like you end up in this field, and it turns out like you killed this person who's your love.
Yeah.
And then over the credits, it gives you a code which you then put into the companion. Mm-hmm. And then it gives you new information that allows you to undo that combination lock or do that combination lock.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's the same in the iOS version, but it's done really cool where it reads like it's just the developer log.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's done really cool. Like it's just a series of blog posts. And it all sounds like it's the developer doing research on these actual stories, trying to find out the actual history of the year walk, and some of the stuff behind all the stories. And he comes across this box which happens to echo the one just like in his game, and he starts getting like weird letters and stuff like shuffled around his house and stuff, and they make it very blatant that these icons are showing up in the letters. So those icons are the icons on this box in the game, and then when you start a new game you go to that box and you can unlock it. And what happens when you unlock the box, Gary?
You get a knife.
You get a knife. So at the end of the like developer blog, he was like, "So I've read about this whole story of this guy who did a year walk, and the whole reason why any of his story is published is because he ended up killing his girlfriend over what he saw in his year walk."
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna open this box. I don't know what this is all about, but I'm gonna put in here a note saying like, don't do this. There's another option, and put in a knife. So it's pretty crazy. Like the whole seeing the future thing ties into the present time when he's developing the game, saying that what you can actually do in the year walk by seeing the future is actually communicate with the future, and the future can like actually interact with you via actual items. And I really, really enjoyed how the ending went down. That was the coolest part of the game by far to me, was going through that story, and then the alternate ending provided via the developer in his research of Year Walk.
The meta shit is what's really neat about it. It's like a really successful cool. Like ARG style.
Yeah.
Blurring of the lines.
Contained all within the game itself, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty great, and that like allowed me to forgive a lot of the things I didn't like about it.
Yeah. I believe as soon as I messaged you and finished the entire thing, I was like, whoa, Year Walk is a banger. Like, yeah. I really enjoyed how they did that ending.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Like, and it takes a little while to get there. Like, if you don't think to do that, put in that code, like, you're just going to feel like, well, that's shitty.
Yeah. I really hope no one settled with the game.
Stupid. Which is like, it's not like that's a problem, like it's, you have to play it the correct way. And the fact that it's meant to make you feel like there's more to do and evoke that feeling in the player to kind of seek out the actual ending is very cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. If you manage to forget about the box entirely, I'm sorry, but it's there right at the start. It's the very first like puzzly item you encounter, and it's meant to be there so that you're like, wait, I finished the game. I never fucking opened that box.
Yeah. Yep. And if you start, it kind of explicitly says like, hey, start a new year walk.
Yeah.
Like you can start a new one. And if you do, the box is right there to remind you.
Yep.
Hey, last time I went through this, that felt like a bad ending. Last time I went through this, I didn't do anything with this box. What do I do with this box? That's very cool. And I like that shit. So all in all, like pretty, not without fault, but good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
It's also like, it's pretty, like it's unique looking, like it's got a weird look to it, which I like.
It's also a fairly short experience too. Like it's It might have taken you a little bit longer because of having to deal with all the phone stuff, but I think I managed to bang it out in like maybe 2 hours. So
it was about 2 hours for me too.
Okay.
Like it is over more settings though, because I would get to a point where it's like I know I have to write stuff down. I'd be in bed and I was just like, I just put it down, like
right.
You know, but not in the same way with Axiom Verge, where I was like, I don't want to really pick this back up. It's more just like I need to do this. I need to like sit down at a desk and play an iPhone game, which is like not the strength of the platform.
No. Yeah, it was I think probably actually a much better release on Steam. I'm glad they did cool stuff with the iPhone for puzzles, but the main basis of the puzzles tends to be write shit down, and if you don't do that, then you're kind of screwed.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say, like, I think that the cool stuff they did with the puzzles with the interface was already done a little bit better with Swords and Sorcery.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the gimmick of Swords and Sorcery if you've never played that. I don't know what the gimmick is on Steam, but like on iOS, you have to do weird things with the interface.
I know that it has like shit with moon cycles and junk, so
yeah, it's good. Like it is good, but it's complicated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably good. Like it is, if we just spoiled that for you, I still think it's probably worth seeking out. But hopefully
it's a cool experience. It's
cool
enjoyable.
Experience.
It's short, and from a small little Swedish indie dev, and they did cool stuff with their own folklore. So
yeah, go for it. Meant originally to be a movie. They were going to make it a movie.
Yeah, I read that too. That's cool.
Which is interesting because it would have been like very strange as a movie.
Yeah.
So maybe the correct choice to make it a game. So, anywho, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with Project Eternity.
Yeah. All right.